So, is it really possible to build wealth and freedom without quitting your day job or sacrificing your family life? Today's guest has done just that, and he's here to show you how. So, welcome to the Business Behind Your Business podcast. I'm Paul Sweeney, and each week we're bringing you practical strategies, real stories to help you build a business and life by design. Whether you're a business owner now or an ambitious professional looking to start a business in the future, we're going to talk about some of the options you've got and how you can get started, not just to grow a new business or start your business, but to grow a successful business without a lot of the stress. So we're going to learn from an expert who's been there, he's done that, and he's helping others learn the same thing. Uh, okay, so in this episode, you'll discover how to start building something of your own while you're still working in a 9 to 5 job, some of the benefits of investing in assets that aren't tied to your time, and the three things that you're going to need to get right for a successful side business without risking career or family life. Now, many high performing professionals, they feel stuck on the corporate treadmill. They want more freedom, but they're not sure how to get there without blowing up everything they've worked for. And today we're going to talk about how you make your 9 to 5 optional, build some wealth outside, and pursue a life by design. So my guest today is Billy Keels. He's a former executive. He's worked directly with Bill Gates, Michael Dell. He's run a 100 million plus business unit across EMEA at SAP. And he's since reinvented himself as a private equity entrepreneur, a best-selling author, and host of the top 1.5% globally ranked Going Long podcast with over 550 episodes. Billy's real superpower, it's helping high-performing professionals escape the golden cage of corporate life without blowing it all up. So he's lived the journey. He's gone from corporate global boardrooms to building generational wealth on his own terms, and he's here today to share his blueprint for freedom with us. So, Billy, look, you've had a very successful and enviable career, and we are thrilled to have you on the Business Behind Your Business podcast.
Hey, Paul, it's a pleasure to be here. I've enjoyed watching and taking in other episodes of yours, and also just the conversation that you and I've had. I'm like, I just want to keep talking to Paul. I don't necessarily know if we need to go live. This is a really cool and enriching conversation. So I'm looking forward to sharing a bit of my journey, and with the goal of being able to help others, especially if you are someone who's in that corporate type of role, corporate executive role today, and you have this voice that's getting louder and louder and louder that says, hey, look, I want to create something. My goal is that a bit of my journey can help you to get to listen to that voice and to be able to take the appropriate action and hopefully get to your goal much faster than I got to mine.
That's a great thing, because a lot of people, they're working in that job. They're often in the corporate environment. They're working let's be honest, they're working a lot more than 9 to 5. They're often working 70 to 80 hours for somebody else. But they've always got that nagging thought that I should start a business, I should grow something that I'm in control of, something for me that's going to help me build up assets without having to turn up 9 to 5 or jump on a plane and cross the globe in that corporate environment. You've been there. What was the trigger for you? You had a very successful career, lots of great stuff going on. What was the trigger for you to say, hey, I need to change something?
Yeah. And I definitely am going to answer that question. I think the one thing that it's really interesting, right? Because I like stats. I worked in sales and sales leadership for the better part of 26 years, right? And in the corporate career that I had. But what I started reading more articles and looking up information, and I recognized there was this Fortune magazine article that said 41% of employees have a side gig. I like to call it side hustle, a side business eventually. And so I start realizing that in that 41%, like, you're not alone if you start thinking, hey, look, I have a high paid job, I'm enjoying it. And there's this voice, as I talked about, that's getting louder that says, hey, look, I want to create something. And so today, as I work within that 41%, and it's the wage earners that are typically in the area of like $200,000. They're in the highly visible type of role. Like, you can't just hide because you're making a lot of salary. You probably have great benefits. You've got a nice car. You've got the great insurance package. And so it's not easy to hide. And at the same time, you want to be able to do something else. because you have this curiosity and you want to explore the curiosity. And at the same time, you want to protect what you already have in terms of the benefits. You like your job. Like I always liked my job in corporate. And you and I were talking about this in the beginning. And maybe we'll come back to that. I didn't leave corporate because I didn't like it. I always liked it. There were things that had nothing to do with corporate. It was more about health and health related to loved ones that was the catalyst to say corporate life was great, but I'm not going to go back to that. So just kind of like that as a precursor. But the thing that really made me decide that I wanted to do something else, and I think a lot of times either you're running towards pleasure or running away from pain. Unfortunately for me, it was a painful event that made me realize that the corporate life was a good life, but it was one that I got out of whack. And what I mean by that is, like, I grew up in a household where I watched both of my parents work two jobs most of the time just to make ends meet, to like pay bills. And so growing up, Paul, I thought that if I got good grades, because that's what my parents told me, I had to get good grades, I had to go out and I had to go to a good school and I had to get a good job and make money, make good money. And I thought that making money was going to solve the problems that I saw my parents struggling with growing up. So go out, do the things my parents told me to do, get a good job, make money, and it will solve all problems. Well, the challenge with that was that worked up until a certain point, and then I got married, and then we had kids, and I realized like I wanted to be a very present father, and so present meaning physically present. Later on, I realized there's something that's even more important than being physically present, and we'll probably come back to that. But here's the hint: it's being mentally present. But when I missed, so there was a thing that happened. There was a business meeting that took place, and I'm based here in Barcelona, Spain. I worked for the German software company that you talked about before, SAP. I worked for them for 16 years, and there was this really big business meeting that was happening with execs and clients and partners, and that was taking place in Germany. And so on the morning of my son's third birthday party, or my son's third birthday, I actually took a flight to Germany to attend a business meeting instead of being at home for my son's birthday party that evening. Now, I did see my son, so it wasn't like a big thing. And the reality is my son didn't even remember this. I've told this story a million times, and my son was like, I don't remember if you were there or not, but I remembered it. And the thing, into the answer to your question is, I realized like at that point in time, like I was living out of alignment because I wanted to be physically present. And in a moment that was really important to me, my son's birthday party, where I had family members that were there and I was at a business meeting, I realized like I was not being like living in alignment with myself. And I realized at that point in time, like I had to do something differently so that I didn't, like, for me, the catalyst was not missing any more birthday parties, but it also meant that I had to do things differently in the way that I was living my life. And I'm sure we can talk more about that, but that was the catalyst for why I wanted to do something different, and eventually took me down a path of starting my own business.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty common story for a lot of people who are starting their business or looking to start a business from corporate. And those catalysts of, we're particularly hearing a lot more about, I guess, us males who probably grew up seeing our parents running businesses or working in jobs, and it was what they did. They went 9 to 5. They sacrificed. They were not present, but it's left a hole for a lot of us.
Hmm.
And a lot more of us are thinking, hey, I don't want to miss that. So how can I provide an income, provide the great things for my family, but still be present for them? And a lot more people are looking towards running a business. So they'll look to start that business, but a lot of people are getting this wrong. We're hearing about, you've got a great success story, which you're going to share. But I think one of the things that you've mentioned, and I just pulled something from one of your LinkedIn posts, is that most people start a business, but they burn the bridge too quickly, and they don't do things well as they're getting prepared for that transition.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I appreciate the LinkedIn thing. I like to stay really active over there on LinkedIn as well. But so one of the things that happens, and this is about being able to figure out. So I think a lot of times people will have this like love hate relationship with corporate life, and corporate was really good to me, and I was really good to corporate, right? And so as a result, I'm a believer of being able to say, once you figure out what it is that you want, like the problem that you want to solve, that's the most important thing. And I'm sure that this has a lot to do because I was in sales and sales leadership. And so if there's no problem to solve, then there's no business to build. And so once I understood that it was a matter of, there was a problem that was big enough that I wanted to put my time, effort, energy, and financial resources behind to solve, I wanted to explore that. And at the same time, because I was a very high wage earner, I wanted to be able to protect the life and the lifestyle that I had for my family. I was the primary breadwinner, and the lifestyle that we had, I wanted to be able to protect that. And so there was a part of it, like I didn't want my employer to know that I was doing something different because I just kind of felt like I was cheating on my employer. Those are a lot of internal feelings. Like those aren't real things because I was already overachieving against my targets. I was going to Hawaii. I was taking my spouse at the time. We would go it seemed like every other year, right? And so you don't go on those types of trips unless you're extremely overachieving against the objectives that are there. So why risk that? And so it was a matter of being able to say, okay, well, how do I protect what I am doing already? I know the problem that I want to solve. And so it is a matter of, instead of working the 14 hours, I was talking to a client last week and she's working anywhere between 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. And she's crushing her targets. And I thought, okay, well, do you really need to continue to do 218% of your target? Like, would it be okay to do 180% of your target? And instead of working 12 to 14 hours a day, that you are working, I don't know, 8 to 9 hours a day or 8 to 10 hours a day. The difference is only 2 hours a day, but that 2 hours a day for those same 6 days a week, that's 12 additional hours that you can do something else with. You can help to solve that problem. Or maybe you want to even just have more time for self reflection and understanding really where you are in life, or just care for yourself. The choice is really yours, but it's a matter of being able to protect, like get clear on what it is that you want to the problem that you want to solve, as I mentioned before, and then protecting the career that you've spent and invested so much of your life to provide you with the benefit. So it's finding um, the right the right way to focus more of your time, effort, and energy on fixing the problem that you want to solve with your business, and being able to protect the role that you have, because then that way you really get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and
Does
I
that make
think I
sense?
think that there's a risk there that a lot of people ignore. So in the situation you just described, overachieving, significantly overachieving, a small reduction in time is not going to have an impact. She's still, well, exceeding the expectations of her employer in that
Right.
role. Where I've seen on the other side, I've seen employers come to me and say, I've got this key person, I've got a problem with them. I know they're leaving because they're doing other stuff while I'm paying them, which I think is a dangerous area to go to, particularly if you're working in an industry where people know you and you want to stay in that industry.
Yeah. So in so the question behind that one.
Oh, okay. So I'm talking about, you've described where a small cutback is not going to affect her efforts for the employer. She's protecting her position. But I've seen a lot of people who, they cut back what they're doing for the employer to do work and it's very noticeable.
Yeah. So so from the employee's perspective, so there's two different things, right? And a lot of in the majority of the clients that I work with, right, they are highly visible, and so they are also they're people that are making 200 to 7 figures a year, and so their visibility is one of the biggest things that they are challenged with, because they are the go-to person. They are the one who everyone comes to, or they're the one that has to be in the particular meeting. There also has to be a certain point where you say, all right, if you're consistently overachieving and you're doing 200+% against a key performance indicator, right? Um, do you need to continue to do 200% against that key performance indicator? Are you doing everything on your own? Are you allowing the rest of your team to grow? Or are you trying to be the one person that is doing everything? So I don't want to not answer the question. I want to answer the question, but also saying it really depends on the specific situation and how is that person achieving against what they want to achieve? And then also too, how are they managing the expectations with their employer? Sometimes it's with their boss, especially when you're in a very large multinational. It's different if you're in a small and medium sized business, right? But a lot of the clients that I'm working with, they're in these companies that have 50, 60,000 people. It's a multinational. And the direct impact that they're having on a P&L, well, it's not like there's only two or three people that are in the organization. So it's how are they managing the expectations that they have with their boss? How are they managing the time? How are they, most importantly, and this is why I keep coming back to it, you have to be able to protect your career and the expectations that you have around your career. Also, what I've seen and what I live myself is the expectations that you have when you're starting your career and you're in your early, you're in your mid 20s, and you are probably single and you're doing the things that you want to be able to do versus 20 years later when you've started a family, your kids are younger, your priorities change. And so the same additional hours that you were putting in early on, well, you want to be able to enjoy time with your family, with your friends. And so that's a whole nother dynamic that's taking place. And it comes back to being able to manage those expectations with your employer, with yourself, with your family, with your children, with your loved ones. And so it is and this is one of the reasons I like to work with people on a one-on-one basis, because everybody's situation is so different, but there are a lot of commonalities that you see across the board. So whether you are the person who is the employer and you have concerns that the person who was doing 200% is now only doing 190%, are they growing their people? Are they actually doing it in a more efficient way that is helping you? Like, it depends on, are you worried about the hours that they're working or the results that they're producing? And so that's a lot of where I work with the executives or the people that I'm working with to help manage those expectations, because it's critical. It's really important.
Yeah, and I
So
guess
hopefully that answered. Does that answer your question, Paul?
yeah, absolutely. Look, I think one of the issues, and you talked about the large companies where there are multiple, there's thousands of employees, different roles, and I guess a small reduction in your output's not going to be as visible. But if you're in a smaller organization, which might have 25 to 50 employees, and you've sort of created a situation where you are absolutely critical to the outcomes being generated by the business, then any reduction in your output is going to be a lot more noticeable. So, coming back to one of the points that you raised is actually how are you managing and equipping, enabling the team that's working with you? Are you holding on to all the skills, or are you sharing them and helping them grow? Because if you're not helping them grow, it's going to be a lot more noticeable when you do leave.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the critical factor, right? This is one of the real conversations that you have to have, because it's a very similar path. So I was speaking to one of the execs last week, right? And so, um, right now, when you're on a path that you continue to do everything yourself, if you are moving to a business ownership, depending on the type of business, because there's a lot of different types of small and medium sized businesses as well, but if right now within a corporate construct you are having challenges in terms of being able to recognize what are the key priorities, who is actually managing that priority, and how is the outcome being achieved. If you're having challenges doing that and you already have the support of an organization, whether it be small or large, and keep in mind most of the ones that I'm talking about are large organizations, then how will that affect you when you want to create something of your own? Because if you're going to just trade the same hours to do exactly the same thing, then on whole, are you designing the type of life that you truly want? Like, it's a skill that you have to learn how to do. You have to learn how to prioritize, and you also have to learn how to delegate and delegate effectively so that you get the right outcome. So that's a part of it, and it doesn't happen perfectly. And there are times where there are high achieving executives in big companies that want to continue to do everything themselves, and that's when it's great to have somebody who's not part of your day-to-day world. You're not one of the loved ones that's in your life. You're not one of the direct reports that you have in your organization. When you have a neutral party from the outside, these are conversations that I'm very comfortable having. And usually the exec listens to me in a different way than they would listen to their spouse or listen to someone that's on their team.
Yeah, and I think what has come very clear from our conversation and the conversation we were having before we hit record was what you're doing here is the missing link. It's it's the gap that I feel that a lot of people who start their business what I've observed is they're missing this step. They're missing the guidance, the planning, and I guess the understanding of what's going to be involved. Because I see a lot of people, they go from having that high income, working those hours, and they make the move to preserve time with family, to or create time with family, create wealth for themselves. But instead of designing the business on purpose and designing with those things in mind, they fall into a trap of they're working just as many hours for a lot less income. They've probably already got commitments that based on the income they had previously, and the family situation has not got better; it's just declined. They're missing more because they haven't designed their business on purpose. And I think what we're talking about here is that missing step that a lot of people get or that they miss completely when they go from corporate employed to starting their own business. I think I get excited about the idea of running our own business, and we miss those key steps in the middle.
Yeah, it's one of the things that happens, Paul. Like, so when I start working with someone, it's critical. Like there is a thing like I like to talk about corporate busyness, right? Not corporate business, corporate busyness. And you are so busy with these 30-minute slots. Like I remember my schedule used to just be 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes call. It's a business review, it's a action plan meeting, it's a disaster recovery or a recovery plan, blah blah blah. But there's these 30-minute chunks, right? And you are so busy. There were very few times that you stop to actually say, okay, well, what do I actually want to do? Why do I want to do this particular thing? And so it's critical when this voice gets louder and I begin to engage with executives. Like one of the very first exercises we do is like, what is the day that you want to live over and over and over again? And because I'm a third party, like I'm not their boss, I'm not their spouse, I'm not like we can really get into the emotion of what is it that you want to do on a day-to-day basis. And when you start to recognize there are moments when the person just really what they want to do is they want to wake up in the morning without an alarm clock. They want to be able to say, you know what, I want to go to my child's event and I don't want to have to pretend that I'm at some other place so that my boss doesn't know because it's at a time of day that I should be working. And when you have that freedom to choose those things, there's also going to be you can't get something for nothing. So if you get to go to your child's game at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, or you want to go meet a friend at 10:30 for coffee, well, there's something that you're going to have to do as a result of getting that time. Does it mean you're going to have to create a better plan? Does it mean you're going to have to come back to what we were talking about before, prioritize the right things and do it at an hour that you were not normally wanting to do? And it's what are the priorities for you? Is it about being able to pick your kids up from school? Is that much more of a priority truly right now in your life than making the $350,000 salary that you're making? Okay, well, if it is, and you want to live in alignment and you don't want to feel the pain, then how do you design that? How does it look? And then we work through that because yeah, you don't get something for nothing. And at the same time, if what you really want is to own your time, well, there's a way to do that.
So when you're working with these executives, okay, so a lot of them have come from large corporates, and you're talking about designing their time, designing what their ideal day looks like. How do you, I guess, deal with a situation where they've come from corporate, where they have all the resources and all the departments at their disposal, to basically being the team of one?
Yeah, this is the classic. Basically, you're going from specialization to generalization, and what do I mean by that? To your point, when you are in a very large organization, I was actually just speaking to someone on a podcast about this yesterday. When you're in a large organization, and like I was in the SAP, like you have an entire organization that is just around F&A, finance and administration, and so within that, there are a lot of different parts. You have everything from your controlling team to that is purely on the tax team and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have your sales organization, and within the sales organization, you have different types of sales organization. We're also talking about this, Paul, whether you are covering a segment of the market that is small and medium sized enterprises and you're working with partners, or you're working directly with very large enterprise companies. Everything in a large multinational is around specialization. And so the great part for someone who is coming from corporate is you've learned how to develop a skill set, a deep skill set. And the reality is when you then move from everyone has a particular role and a particular specialization. You've learned how to interact with those different departments. So you do play with a bit of an advantage, because now when you start to recognize when you're building your own small business, it's about what are the skills for it. We always start with what are the skills that are transferable? Which skills do you already come to the table with? And because I work with mostly people that are in sales, marketing, or sales leadership, or marketing leadership, they start there. The good news is when you know how to actually attract client, or define your client, attract your client, and serve your client, that's the revenue side of the business. So when you're able to generate more revenue, then it helps to open up the doors for you to then hire the other members of your staff. And maybe they're going to start out as contractors, but you want to bring somebody on board who's legal. You want to bring somebody on board who understands the numbers, that can help you to build a budget. And it doesn't have to be as complex as it was in your corporate role. It can be something that's very simple, because unless you have clients to serve, all of the rest of it doesn't really make much sense. So in that construct, it's, yes, recognize where you've come from, a deep specialization in corporate, and we assess the skills, the transferable skills that the person has, and then based on that, recognizing, okay, there is a lot of things that they heard of, maybe didn't have a deep knowledge of across the silos within a big company, but then it helps them to recognize which parts of the team do they need to contract first, and then basically from there build out the rest of the team. And the other good part, and we've talked about this too, nowadays there's so much technology that because you will have more time, there are lots of automations that today didn't exist when I started this business, 10, 12 years ago. So hopefully that understanding that transition from deep specialization into, yes, you will be the chief everything officer in the beginning, that CEO, the chief everything officer. Um, it, we look at how we take those skills and then help you build out your own team.
Mm. And I think, yeah, we were talking about this before we hit record about how global the world has become in the world of business, and how you can tap into the skill sets of somebody in another country, or as you mentioned, so much automation and AI technology that didn't exist 10 years ago, that we can tap into. But I think realizing what you can do and what you need to outsource or what you need to contract is a key area. I see a lot of business owners think that they still have to do everything because they can't afford to spend. Um, if you generate the revenue, you've got the capacity to engage the skill sets that you need to grow your business, and complement the skills that you have.
Yeah, you know what, Paul, if I could just add one other thing, because this is also too what tends to happen, and maybe it's a part of because of the way that I grew up, and just seeing, being sometimes the first person in your family that is actually generating revenue, and you're doing that through corporate. There's a tendency that I've seen in working with my clients is that when you make money, you just want to store the money, because there is I'm making money, my business is becoming profitable. At least you believe it's becoming profitable because you see more money in the bank, and that money in the bank starts to give you this sense of safety. But the reality is, if the money is just growing in the bank because this new business venture is starting to take off, but you're not actually building out members of your team, you're just working more hours. And you have to realize that the money is energy that will allow you to get to the life and the lifestyle that we designed in step one. And so that's something that's very typical that I see. And it's a matter of then helping the person realize that money has to be released responsibly, so that you're not just finding yourself working 18 to 20 hours a day in your own business versus working the same 16 to 18 hours in someone else's business. So you mentioned that, but it's also one of the things that I recognize that I find myself talking about more and more frequently with that executive who's going from corporate executive to business ownership, is to make sure that you're releasing the money, releasing the energy, so that you don't have to spend more and more hours.
And it's certainly a trap to go and see that wealth accumulating in a bank account, but the I guess the energy is declining because you're spending more time and you're trying to do things that are just draining you. So you need to reinvest in that, create that asset. So not just create the job, but create the asset that's
That's
going
it.
to
Yeah.
build wealth and enable you to take that time out to comfortably and guilt free go and spend the time with family, not miss those key events. So we're talking about building it up. So rather than just creating a job, we're creating an asset that doesn't depend on you. Use the skill sets of others, use the automations that are available, and design, I guess, your ideal business.
Yes. Yes, and then the other thing is there's a point where you're going to want to always like you have to do the work. This is another trap that happens a lot, right? When you've realized how to understand to delegate things effectively in your corporate role, and then you want to build your asset, you're creating your asset, and then you want to begin from the very start to delegate everything in your asset. Usually there's a separate type of client that comes to work with me as well, that is they've started down this path, they've been working in their corporate job, and they've been building an asset, or creating this asset on the side, and it could take a couple different forms, and they've been doing this for a while, and the asset is not really performing correctly. They're using money from their corporate job to kind of not really understand what's happening because they're making a lot of money over here and they're fixing it in their business. They are in essence financing their own business, and the business isn't running properly, and they've realized like, hey, hang on a second, there's not structure here, I'm not building this in the proper way, and I'm completely exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, I'm frustrated at work, I'm frustrated with my business, but I don't want to give up on my dream. So it's, how do we then reset and figure out, okay, what exactly needs to happen, and how can you get close to the business to really understand it truly, this business on the side that you're building. Because once you actually get an understanding for it, then you can see how it functions, and then you get the right the right contractor or the right person to then take that over. So that I guess that's one of the things that I would also caution against. And if you're watching, or as you're watching now, is to say, um, don't delegate everything too quickly, because you need to understand it. And especially if you're getting started in the beginning, get close enough to your business that you understand what is happening. And then once you have a clear understanding, then you begin to contract, even if it's not your area of specialization. At least understand what is there. It will help you to ask the right questions so that you know exactly what talent or what skill you're hiring for.
Yeah, look, I would say that what you're describing is, in a way, informed delegation, as contrast to what I often see in a lot of businesses, where it's a form of abdication
That's
or
it. Yeah.
hope
Yeah.
that they've just spent some money, got a resource, and hoping that it's going to work the way that
That's
they
it.
think it's going to work.
That's
But
it.
understanding what's involved helps you make a better decision about who to engage and what the outcomes you're looking for.
Yeah. And there's humility that comes in that, because, and it goes back to one of the things you were talking about before, and this is working with clients, this is one of the things that you see over and over is, when you are in your corporate role, you are the specialist, you are the one who knows every single thing, and the questions that you ask are usually informed over an area of specialization that you already have. When you're moving outside of an area that you don't have specialization in, it's almost like one of the things that I see that happens frequently is you don't want to ask. But this is where it's really important to leverage that skill, that transferable skill. You're strong with asking the right questions at the right time, and recognizing that now you don't understand the area. And so you want to use that skill of asking questions, especially when you don't understand. It may feel different. However, using that superpower to uncover areas that you are less familiar with, it will help you be more informed, so that later when you are hiring, you know what you're hiring for. So I want to give a real life, because it's something that happens very frequently, especially when you're coming from specialization and you're going to the chief everything officer, and we lose sight of that. And I want to just shine a light on it, because it's a superpower that can be used to actually help you make your own side business more effective, so that you are not working so many hours over the period of time upfront. Yeah, you're going to need to invest the right amount of time, but then ultimately it's so that you can find the right skill set to take over a particular task.
Yeah, I love the way that you phrase it in terms of humility and asking the right questions to learn and understand. Because I do see a lot that come from corporate. They've got the expectation that I have come as the expert, the specialist. Um, I don't want to appear weak
Yep, that's it.
by letting people know that I don't fully understand what's going on here, or that I'm dependent on them to provide the outcome. So asking the correct questions, I guess admitting that you don't have that skill set is a key to moving forward.
I mean, it's absolutely key, and it's one of the reasons that you, as you walk into business ownership, you understand more and more that it is about I mean, and this is going to sound redundant, but it's the same skill set that help you become the great corporate executive that you are today. You surround yourself with people that have more skill than you, but it's in an area of specialization. It's use that same transferable skill, but as you're creating an asset for yourself. I mean, it's a really simple thing because you're using the same skill set. You're just using it in a different environment, and that's a large part of the the one-on-one work that we look at is what is a specific scenario and how can you use that scenario to create and leverage the asset that you're building today.
So there's so many key points that we've got there, and we'll put a summary of that together in the show notes. And also, look, conversation doesn't stop here. Reach out to Billy at his website, billykeels.com, and also on LinkedIn. But Billy, if there was one key area that people need to get right when they're deciding to move from corporate to their own business, what's that one key area that people often get wrong?
Well, I think it's really the first step, and it's one of those things that, and I know you just mentioned that, like, it's one of we've created an asset. It's actually, if you go to makeitoptional.com, you can pick it up in the makeitoptional.com. The very first step is what I mentioned before. There, especially when you're in corporate, there is so much corporate busyness that you don't stop to understand where it is you want to go and why you want to go there. When you have clarity of what you want to do, it makes every decision that you make, it makes it easier because you know what you're saying yes to, you know what you're saying no to. It helps you to actually figure out where are your strengths, how do you lean into those strengths, and then what are you going to need to do in terms of surrounding yourself with the right skill set so that you can successfully get to your end goal, which is the destination. So everything in my world starts with clarity. And so if you've ever struggled with that, like I said, you can go to makeitoptional.com, pick that up, and you can find out. And Paul, since you mentioned it, the LinkedIn piece, I've always found that it's useful if you reach out on LinkedIn, and when you do, because I know you're coming from Paul's community, just let me know that you've already listened to Paul and I have a conversation here, and it just makes the conversation much easier. So.
Absolutely. Some great resources, some great tips. And I love the first step. Start with the first step: clarity, design, purpose. You can move beyond 9 to 5. And look, the people that are hearing this and really scratching that itch about, I want to do something, they're working more than 9 to 5. We know that.
Yeah.
Let's build that asset, create something on the side or something to move to, but create something, build the wealth and the freedom, and design the life that you want to live. Billy, you've given us a great starting point. It's now up to us to take that advice and move forward with it. Thank you for sharing with us on the business behind your business. And look, if you're listening to this, don't be selfish. Don't hold this to yourself. Share this with somebody else who's going through this journey or needs to hear this message as well. And make sure that they reach out to Billy and his team and grab a hold of those resources that we've mentioned. They'll be in the show notes. The links will be there. So you can find them in the show notes or on the businessbehindyourbusiness.com website. And look, we are so grateful for what you've shared with us today, Billy. It's absolutely foundational, and we want people to start their business on the right footing so that they can grow a great business that gives them and their families freedom.
Thank you, Paul.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Business Behind Your Business. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and valuable for your business journey. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with fellow business owners who could benefit, and send in your burning questions because we love hearing from you. Missed any of our previous episodes or looking for additional resources to help grow your business? Head over to our website at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. There you'll find our full archive of past episodes along with show notes, transcripts, and links to valuable resources mentioned in each episode. Your journey to business success continues at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. Until next time, stay inspired, stay informed, and keep building the business of your dreams.